So Helen and Julie, thank you so much for being with us today. And
Welcome.
We're in the bunker space here at the museum, and we're going to find out about the counterculture history, the communal history, intentional communities, and all sorts of different aspects from those times. So I have some questions here, and the first question I have is, what were the reasons that brought you to the Slocan Valley here? Are you able to describe sort of push and pull factors sort of brought you to this area and brought you into this environment here?
So I can start first. We were in California and the Vietnam War was starting, and all of our friends from high school, a lot of them were getting drafted. Our brother got drafted, and it was just kind of a tumultuous time where we didn't want to be part of that. And it was a whole movement of people feeling that way. So because we were both Canadian, we decided to head to Canada. The men we were with weren't, but 2 out of the 3 were going to be drafted. So we went, okay, let's do it. So that was the initial reason.
We were fortunate because we're British. And when my parents came after the war, Julie and I were born
Toronto, yeah.
in Toronto. And then they continued on to the States because that's what their goal was at the time, to be in the States where the streets are paved with gold.
California especially.
And it was brutal, as you know, after the war. So we were lucky because we had the Canadian ticket. We were born in Canada. So even though we lived in the States and went to school there and everything, we were Canadians. So it was we were at a kind of a fortunate situation to be able to either marry or bring the guys that we were with out of the States with us.
Yeah, at that time you could marry somebody and get them immigrated. It was easier. Now that's not happening.
Well, why did Slocan Valley? Any particular reason?
Actually, Tom Lynn was one of the first was a friend in San Jose. We were all in the San Jose area. They were all in university, and I was at State College. And he had some reason. I think he had David Orcutt's name from somewhere, and they left ahead of us and went there first to the Slocan Valley. He and Shelley and myself and my partner, and then the other couple. You were with Ross in a different group at the time, or came up later. We went looking all over British Columbia for land to buy, and we ended up coming here because we didn't find anything that we liked. We went way up north to Vanderhoof and just didn't like it as much, so we said, okay, let's go find Tom and Shelley in Slocan Valley. So we did.
But first of all, we went to Fauquier.
Yes, we were living in Fauquier, that's right.
We lived in Fauquier, and that's our slight connection with Quakers, because the place we lived on, they had come up in the Korean War to protest the Korean War as Quakers.
Yeah, the Orcutts, yeah.
And then David and Ruth split up, and he moved to the Slocan Valley, bought the place that turned out to be right next to our property, and that's what Tom knew. Tom knew that our place was for sale because he was here.
On the other side.
Dave was there,
property.
and this 160 acres was for sale, which was perfect because we came from a communal life in California and went, okay, well, we'll do this. We're doing it in Fauquier, and we'll bring it over to the Slocan.
Yeah, we lived in Fauquier while we were looking for land here, so.
I wouldn't be surprised if you find that most of the people you speak to, it's somebody else that brought them here.
Yeah.
You know, because everybody was kind of...
Looking for somewhere to go, out of America at the time. Yeah. The draftable ages, anyway.
And can you tell us about the Flying Hearts Commune? And I've got some points we're looking to trying to find out about how was it organised, how many people were living there on time, did that change over different periods, how were decisions made, and how did you deal with disagreements and that sort of thing, also about the labour, how was that divided up?
You want to start first?
Okay, well,
yeah.
There were, initially there were the couples. There were 3 couples of us that actually lived there. There was a couple that lived in California that bought in with us, because we just took, it was $10,000 to buy 160 acres.
So we had to pool our money.
So we had to
Yeah.
find $10,000.
Yeah.
So one of our people was a professor a woman, professor in California. She cashed in her retirement, and she got, I think, $500.
Yeah.
Which was a hell of a lot of money. My partner had $1,000. The people in California that wanted to eventually move up with us had $3,500. And a woman who lived with us on our commune in California had $5,000, and
Inheritance,
she
yeah.
lived in India. So she just gave us the $5,000, said, I want to be involved. It was very organic.
Yeah.
And as far as, and we had kids.
We had 2 babies in
There
the,
were
when we were building the big
two
house.
babies
Oh,
born
and they had
there.
the 2 kids
Two babies
before.
born there,
Yes.
or born in Fauquier, and then other kids. So it ended up, when we were all together, there were 7
At
or
one
8
time, there was
kids.
18 people in the house.
Yeah, 18 people living in,
In the one house,
our
yeah.
house, the house that we built, the log house we built. We built a communal house, thinking this will be the hub for the community, and then couples will go off and build their own houses. That's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
And the wonderful thing that happened when we went off and built our houses is we all broke up.
Well, we broke up kind of before that.
The couples, it was like the last
The couples
straw.
all broke
Building a
up.
house with your mate, whoa! You sure find out stuff that way.
And we didn't really have any rules or, like you're saying, how it was directed. It was very organic. Like I said, we just made decisions as they came along and usually agreed. We didn't have any big disagreements except the couples that split up, but not within the group of people. We were all on the same mission to build this house and have gardens and do those things and all together and just be together. So.
Was there a role that you sort of gravitated to on the commune side? Certain specific things?
Was there a what? Sorry.
A role that you took?
Because I had a new baby, I was doing a lot of the cooking and cleaning and sort of did help with building the house, like digging the water line that was near the house. And then Helen and all the guys went up, way up in the forest and cut the trees that we used for the log house. And the neighbor we bought the land from pulled them all down with his horse, which was incredible. And so yeah, we sort of just fit into what we could do, and we all were open to learning, because none of us had ever built a house before, especially a log house. And
so you must have learned a lot when you were, a lot of skills when you were doing this, and
Yeah, we gained some
learned
skills.
how to peel logs.
We sure
and how
screwed
to-
up
yeah.
a lot.
Yeah.
But it was good. We were young, and we were certainly willing to listen to the old Doukhobors, whoever was one of the old guard in the valley.
Yeah.
Some people really took us under their wing.
Yeah, it helped.
Well,
yeah.
we'll talk about that because you asked about the Doukhobors. But yeah, and also the other thing as far as roles go, I didn't have kids, and I was a musician, and 3 of us were musicians. So the 3 of us were definitely, that was a part of our
Your
being
focus,
together
yeah.
too. And that's turned in later into being a professional band.
What's a day life like living on a commune? What would your daily routines be?
Get up, somebody, like we were talking about that, just everybody sort of get up and do what they do. Somebody would start a fire, somebody would put the coffee on. We'd pretty well spend the mornings together, and then whatever had to be done, they'd go off to do the logs, or we'd deal with something else. So there wasn't really specific roles, but everybody just seemed to work together and do what had to be done. It didn't seem to be anything specific.
Did you come together at meal times a lot?
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
had
we were
great
together.
Big meals.
Believe
yeah.
me, we were together most of the time.
Yeah, because we hadn't started to build any of the other houses yet. We were just still working on the main house.
And there was, especially in the first while there was so much to do. Like I planted a ton of fruit trees,
Yeah.
and yeah, we were building a base, the big house,
Yeah.
what we called the big house, which was a 2-story log house on top of
It's in the brain damage poster. You
Yeah,
can see that.
on top of a basement that wasn't really a basement, it was just a mud,
Dirt.
disgusting mud thing that we actually built bunks in and lived in while we were building.
Above
up
us,
above
yeah.
us, which was just like about that much better than hell.
The babies
It
would
was
crawl-
really, and the babies
yeah,
crawling
go
in the mud.
across the bed
No,
and
what's the
then-
baby?
Yeah. And to crawl on the beds, not on the
Yeah,
ground.
it was bleak. But hey,
little bit, no.
you're 19 or 20 years old,
Yeah.
it's an adventure.
Yeah.
Okay. And how, this is an interesting question, but how would your life differ from like a normal conventional, like a single occupancy environment? How different was your life, do you think, in our commune there? What differences were there?
Completely different.
Yeah.
I think. Well, you were talking about how when we all left and her and Ross were together, and it was different. Just having the two of them, right? Two of you.
It's a great buffer to be in a group with a
Yeah.
lot of people.
Yeah.
And so if you've got, I mean, really, you couldn't really have issues as a couple in front of everybody, especially if you're in the
Yeah.
mud,
Yeah.
in the deep, dark mud. So I don't think, because I live rurally mostly, still. I've gone back because of my career. I've gone back to the States for years and years on end, and then I came back to
Me
Canada
too,
again.
yeah.
But I think, you know, I get up and I'm canning, I'm freezing, I have a huge garden, which we had. That was very important to us to have a garden. So I think the difference is that you're around people a lot, and like as Julie said, it's organic. You slide into the different roles. Nobody's saying, this is your role. You're going, you see what needs to be done, and you do it. And when you're in a big group like that, and of course we were together a lot, so we ate just about I'd say all meals together, unless we were working, like when Ross and I were working on the Vatican Hall, but then we were eating lunch at work. But yeah, I'd say there are similarities and there are differences. If you choose to live in a commune that's rural, because still I feel like I'm still doing a lot of the same stuff.
Yeah.
Did you have a livestock as well? Or was
Similar.
it just,
No, we didn't.
We've tried to.
No, we had
Julie
chickens at one time.
Yeah, Julie and I had this great idea that we were going to grow Angora rabbits because we're both fabric people.
Yeah.
So we were going to have Angora rabbits and then have Angora wool and be able to sell it. We were knitting and stuff like that. But rabbits are amazingly stupid. They're much stupider than chickens. And after having a few rabbits, we went, this is way more work than it's worth. At least chickens have eggs, you know. So, and also we had bears. So bears were constantly raiding.
Yeah.
Raiding
There's
the
a lot
chicken
of bear,
coop,
yeah.
raiding the rabbit pens. Yeah. Yeah.
And you say you were sewing. Were you making your own clothes?
Yeah, doing a lot of that. Yeah, sewing, knitting. Yeah.
Yeah, Julie was an amazing knitter. And I'll tell you, the wool long underwear that she knit was great for living in the basement in the mud. Because it was about the only thing that could keep you warm.
Appreciate it. Great. Okay. Now, how important was spiritualism to your time in the?
We had nothing religious at all, but I would say that the spiritual part of it for us is the love of the land and taking care of it. And that's mainly what inspires us, I think.
Yeah.
Nobody
of our
was
group
religious.
was religious at all.
No.
And we definitely aren't and still are not. And but we really, really loved the forest and loved the land.
Yeah.
And felt very comfortable there. I still do.
And feel like protecting it.
I
We
feel
did
more,
protect
I feel
it.
more comfortable like in the forest than I do in downtown Vancouver, that's for sure.
That must have been an appeal.
The big appeal was
the
the beauty of it all, yeah, and our land, because it was so big, we could walk everywhere, and we walked trails down to David Arquette's, and so we had a whole world right there, sort of. We didn't have to go anywhere else, really. Go to Nelson once every couple weeks, maybe. We had no money, so we didn't do much shopping.
They called that movement Back to the Land for a reason.
Yeah.
Great. And what sort of connection did you have with people, places, you're talking about the places outside the commune? So you say you didn't go to Nelson very often.
No, but we did. Because there were so many people coming at the same time, there were a lot of different groups, and we did connect as friends. We met a lot of different people, and so we used to walk down, like in Appledale, it's now the daycare, but we used to walk down and spend the night with friends, because we didn't have vehicles. We only had one, I think, that wouldn't run well. So we'd walk everywhere, and you'd spend more time. You wouldn't, by the time you get down there, it's dinner time and it's dark, you're not gonna walk home, so we'd spend the night. So things were more just groups of people hanging out together. We met a lot of the groups. Some of them we didn't relate to at all, like you said, the ones that were really cultish. There were a few of those, but it was mostly, yeah. We did meet
connections to the Quakers and the Doukhobors, is that correct?
Well, not like Argenta Quakers.
No.
You asked about that
We met
specifically.
them later.
I met them later because of
Yeah.
music.
Yeah,
But-
and some of them in the film business.
But the Doukhobors were really just like the Doukhobors are. There were three very distinct groups. There were the Sons of Freedom, there were what they call the Universal Brotherhood or whatever.
Yeah,
That-
USCC
And then there
or
were the
whatever.
assimilating Doukhobors.
Yeah.
So we met somebody from each of the groups at times.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say the guy who helped us, the guy who pulled down the logs for our log house with the horse, that couple that lived down at the very bottom, in fact, they're the people who sold us the land.
Yeah, that's who we bought.
I'm sure they just went, oh yeah, we got these.
Well, he didn't
stupid
trust the
Californians.
government, so we paid him $10,000
in cash.
in cash money, and he got a ride to Nelson and bought a vehicle with cash
Yeah.
money. He didn't believe in banks, so there was a lot of that similarities to us, so there were a lot of them that did relate to us because we had those same kind of anti-government feelings, I guess, because they had been messed around quite a bit. But then there were others that really didn't like us at all. Didn't like the hippie movement.
Even Rebalkans, who sold us the property, even they had bought the dream that we left.
Yeah, kind of.
We
yeah,
were
yeah.
anti-dream. We did not want, a perfect example, Alex immediately went and bought a car from Whitewater Ford, because all the Doukhobors drove Fords. And when I went to their house to do something at one point, I noticed that all their furniture and their rugs had plastic runners over it. Just like it's like the worst of the 50s and 60s. But that was something to aim for have a clean, non-communal life, a life where just a couple lived with their kids maybe. And we were going a different direction. So there was underlying, I think Alex's wife never, Martha Nick, she never interacted with us at all.
No, she didn't, no.
Alex did, partly because we were paying him to help us get the logs down, and we paid him the money for the land. But I think there was a part of him that was slightly intrigued.
Yeah, yeah.
He thought it was nothing but sex. He thought sex and drugs and rock and roll. He was very excited about that. And I think, a certain segment of the Doukhobor population were very puritanical. And so that's very appealing. Not that they want to do, they'd like to do it, but in a voyeuristic kind of way. I think they loved that in a way. Mm-hmm. It was a wonderful rumor mill.
Yeah.
Wasn't as exciting as they thought.
But then the kids that went to school, we had a few elementary school kids, they weren't treated very well. They were called hippoons, and they were harassed a lot. But that was the lower age group.
And I don't think it was the Doukhobor kids that harassed them necessarily.
I think it was. That's what David said,
Because some of the Anglo people were.
Yes, and there was that too. Yeah, yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Is there any instance
You asked
you
about
can
the
remember
Anglos.
that's happened to you?
Oh yeah, we went to the Slocan Inn, to the bar.
Oh yeah, and David got
After a
beat up.
hard day of work. I think we had a car then.
Yeah.
It was David and I and Bing and.
Slocan Inn.
Yeah,
yes.
and music might have had something to do with it. Maybe there was a band there or something. David went down to the bathroom and got the shit beat out of him. for just
by
being a
some
hippie.
loggers that just
Yeah,
didn't like
just-
hippies.
Just beat him up for no
Yeah,
reason.
yeah.
Smashed his teeth in, and I mean, that was awful. And then Jones' store was the store at Winlaw that now where the little gas pumps are and stuff. That was called Jones' store, Welsh woman,
Mrs. Jones,
Mrs.
yes.
Jones. And she was very frosty. And when you went in there to shop, she had a counter, and she was saying, "What do you want?"
Everything was behind the counter.
And
yeah.
you'd say, "A loaf of bread, brown or white?"
Yes, it was
And then she'd go get a brown or white or whatever. And then her son, Stuart, was a short guy who wanted to be a cop. And he had failed all the tests because he was too short. But he was determined
Yes.
to police the world against hippies.
Yeah.
So he was a jerk. So there was those things. And then there were the Doukhobors like Pete Kabatoff and Pete Zuckerhoff. Or Phil Kabatoff and
Phil
Pete
Kabatoff,
Zuckerhoff.
yeah.
Those people were fantastic.
Yeah.
They weren't Anglos though, they were Russians, they were Doukhobors. They loved us and we partied with them.
Yeah, we partied
It was
with them and, yeah.
fantastic. There was just they were totally open. So that was very cool. And some of those people mentored us. And in other parts of the valley, too, hills where I moved after that, yeah, the Doukhobors were fantastic.
Yeah.
So tell us about the parties.
Pardon me?
Tell us about the parties.
Yeah. Well, she was saying when we were discussing the questions that we did have wonderful big meals with lots of people and sort of almost every night, you know, there's always lots of action. Lots of, yeah, it was nice.
Yeah. And I imagine you would have had the campfire going
Yeah.
and lots of people coming in for these parties, or was it really just the people who were there? Or?
Both. There was both. Yeah.
We
We built a sauna. There was a sauna there. And
when Julie got married, when Julie and Dave got married down in Nelson at the courthouse, Bing and I, who's one of the other music guys, and my ex, three of us went over to Folkier, where we used to live, and we were given a sheep by Burlig, because you've read, by Jimmy and Dick.
Yeah.
They gave us a sheep as a present
wedding, yes.
for Julie, a live
That's
sheep.
right.
So we had a Ford Econoline van at the time, I think it was an Econoline, and that was made up into a camper. We put the sheep in the back with a bunch of hay, and then the three of us sat up front, and on the way out of Folkier, we hit a deer.
Hit a deer.
We hit a deer. And we went, we can't leave a deer, there's more meat.
Yeah.
So the deer was dead, so we cut the scent gland out and strapped it to the back of the van, to the thing, which freaked the sheep out. Something fierce. Have this bleeding deer on the back of the van. And then we drove the 100 and whatever it is miles back to Perry Siding, where we were living. We had toboggans at the bottom because we didn't know what was happening exactly. We knew we were going to get the sheep, and we packed there were two toboggans, so we packed the dead deer onto one toboggan, and the live deer we just walked up and pulled up for 2 kilometers up this brutal road. No, not tracked at all, tracked for people, and that was pretty amazing. And then when we got to the top, we realized, okay, we're going to have this big banquet. We're going to have to kill this sheep. We're going to have to shoot this sheep.
Yeah.
So Bing, the musician, he got that job. And let's say he somewhat bungled it. He shot the sheep way more than he needed to before it died. But then we had this huge party. Massive party, and people came from all over the place. I don't even know how, we had no phones or anything in those days. I don't know how people know about those things, but they do.
Word of mouth, yeah.
And so we had this huge party, and here's a person, bacchanalian thing. We put boards and doors and made an enormous table in the main part of the house. And then everybody sat around on chairs and stumps and whatever they could sit on. And then at points, and we had roasted this sheep and the deer, and hung up. It was freezing cold outside. It was really late in winter. So we hung up parts of the outside so they could freeze. And then we cut it as well as we could, and none of us were professional butchers, might I add. So at one point, we were doing things, we're at this long table, and somebody goes, "Pass me the deer!" or something. A leg comes flying down the table. That's the sort of thing. Yeah, that's the sort of thing we were doing. That's great. That was one of the good parts.
Yeah.
Okay, and now, did you have any dealings with the D Squad? D Squad?
Yes.
Or-
No, we don't even remember being called that, but there was a guy who upstairs here. What was
Taylor.
his name?
Taylor.
Was it Taylor?
Taylor.
The
He was an
immigration guy.
cop.
And he was on to everybody. And he did come to Folkhaven looking for one of the guys. He had heard that he was there, and he jumped out the back window and he never found
He
him.
hid in a, we had a big culvert there,
Yeah.
and he hid inside the culvert
Yeah.
the whole time the guy was
So
there.
we came looking for him, but that was our only. We were kind of surprised. How did you know we were here? But because Folkhaven's a long way from Nelson, and down a also 2-mile dirt road to get to the house. So that was our only experience with that.
Yeah, I mean, there's stories about FBI agents coming around and investigating. And
Well, I thought they did bring an FBI guy. Well, there was a book somebody wrote about the whole FBI
Yeah.
infiltrating
And I've
some of the
read
communes.
some of that.
But we weren't aware of that going on.
I was not aware of that.
No.
I think Taylor brought cops with him,
Yeah.
RCMP.
Yeah,
I don't
he
think
did. It
I
might
don't
have
think there
been
was
RCMP.
American.
that
I think it was
were with
all
him. 'Cause
Canadian.
I was there the day it happened, but
Yeah, they were
yeah, it
trying to
was a couple
track
of cops.
illegals.
Draft dodgers. Yeah.
Illegals, whether
Yeah.
they were draft dodgers or not. You know, some of us came in, I mean, of course, Julie and I, we had a right to be there, but some of us, like Julie married David, so that he got him in. And Ross and I never did get married, but Ross there was a point system in those days, 50 points. And you got
Oh,
points
right.
for
your
big points for being,
education, certain-
education, if you were offered
Yeah.
a job, your skills, a number of things, your ability to speak French and English, those sorts of things. And so Ross said, if I can't get my 50 points, we'll get married. But he got 51 or something.
Right.
So we didn't have to
that.
get married, which was really good. Very good for all of us.
And then Bing married somebody to get in, I think.
Yeah.
How did he get immigrated?
Well, Bing was, I can't remember, because Bing was the guy I ended up with.
He's the guy who
musician.
jumped out the window.
And, yeah, and he was a Navy veteran. So when we came across the border, Ross and David were eligible. David had gotten out of going to in the Army because he had a kid. He had a and Ross had gotten out for the very weird reason that he had a fused wrist, and he supposedly couldn't fire a gun, which was bullshit. He could fire a gun, but
We'd rather
for
he
their
didn't.
for their whatever specifications, he couldn't. So yeah, so it was. I can't remember how Bing eventually did it. How he got? No, we got in the amnesty because there was an amnesty in 1973.
That's right, there was an amnesty. Yes.
We came up in '69. There was an amnesty in '73.
From Carter. Was it Carter who did that?
Post Nixon.
Post Nixon.
Yeah.
And there was drugs being taken, or was it being grown?
We were growing.
Was there?
Growing?
We were growing pot.
Growing pot?
Yeah.
Just to make. In fact, we sold a bag for $500, and that went into the house.
Actually, I didn't think that was. I thought we haven't talked about this, but
No.
this is my memory. We grew dope up in Folkier, not in
Yes, yeah.
Perry Siding. And it was shit. It was what they
We
call
used to call it
shake,
tops.
what they would
Well,
call
we used to
shake
call it
now.
tops, the
Yeah.
buds. They weren't
Yeah.
buds yet.
Yeah, they weren't buds. It was very low end. It was just like Mexican stuff you used
Yeah.
to buy in California. And we put it in garbage bags, and I don't know who connected, but some guy hitchhiked out from Vancouver and bought 2 bags from us.
Yeah,
And my memory
500.
was that it was $50 a bag.
I thought it was 500, but who
And
knows?
because with that money, we went down to Fields and we bought all of us winter boots.
Yeah.
Children, that's what we did with the money. And then this guy goes with these 2 bags of dope over his shoulder, hitchhiking back to Vancouver.
And then, yeah.
That was a pretty wonderful story.
And we used to get, myself and Connie, because we had babies, we got $6 a month family allowance, they called it. And we used to come to town and buy a bag of oranges, a bag of carrots, a bag of potatoes, and a bag of onions for $6. And we'd eat that for weeks. That's what's our big source of food. The stuff we buy, because we just didn't have the money. Things were cheap then, when you figured $6 went a long way.
Cool. So we want to talk about brain damage here. So how did the music group begin?
Yes, you can explain more of that.
Well, we played music in California at our commune. Some people did.
Was a major.
Bing was the major
Musician.
songwriter, and he was, from the second I met him, he had been playing music.
Extremely
He was
talented.
like a folk musician.
Yeah.
He played music in the Navy, in fact, and our family is musical. My dad was a trumpet player. Our dad was a trumpet player, and so I always sang, and Julie sang too. So we sang, but it became more formal as we just wanted to do it more of the time. That's actually what it ended up being. We'd rather make music than dig trenches and live in mud. So Dave and I and Bing, first of all, we also,
The couple
this is,
split up.
it's a really complex story. There was a guy named Peter Offerman who had a studio out in Queens Bay. And there was a CBC radio show they wanted to do about mining in Riondell. Riondell's has a very famous mine called the Bluebell Mine. So they wanted to do a show about that. There was a murder that happened there. And so they hired us to act in it. It was radio play. Act in it and sing in it.
About that.
And that's how Bing and I ended up we went on that trip to do that, and we ended up getting together. It was time that we left our mates anyway, but the music is what brought us together. So then we all split up, and some people stayed in the valley, and the ones that wanted to do music, and Julie had left earlier, we went to Vancouver. We met other musicians there. That's where the Brain Damage Band really came together.
And they came back, like Gary Kramer came
Yeah,
back
so-
to here.
Yeah, we met a young guitar player who was recommended to us. It was really good, really young, and then a drummer.
Right?
And so there were the three of us and them, and it morphed, as bands do over time. But you asked about the name.
Yes.
We were in Vancouver. We were reading the paper. Dave, who was our fearless leader, I call him the ringmaster, because there's always somebody who inspires, and he was an ideas guy. He wasn't like a dogmatic leader by any means, no cult stuff like that. But he had lots of great ideas.
Yeah, the ideas. Yeah.
And so we were reading the paper. Everybody was, we get a paper and everybody reads a section of it, because we couldn't afford to buy a bunch of papers. And he says, hey, look at this article. It says, this gives you brain damage. I've done that. And this gives you brain damage. You done that? Oh yeah, we've done that. Yeah. And we're all going, oh yeah. He says, maybe that should be the name for our band. And sure enough, it was really hard to put up posters in people's stores for gigs.
Nobody liked the name.
Yeah, nobody liked that name.
Yeah.
That was a really bad name for
I
that.
think so too.
But it turned out to be a very catchy name, and nobody forgets it. I mean, anybody our age around here knows about brain damage.
Yeah.
Anybody who was around at the time. I've had things like where I get on the bus and the guy goes, you look really familiar. What do you do? I said, I'm a musician. Were you in brain damage? Stuff like that. And then there's been a number of books about this area, and so we've been featured in a couple of those books. So, yeah. Anyway, that's kind of the story about brain damage. It was, again, organic.
Morphed, yeah.
It morphed, yeah.
And what was the inspiration for the songs?
Different
Well,
writers. Gary
yeah.
wrote a lot of the songs.
Yeah.
And
We wrote about anything that was happening to us, I mean.
what was going on, yeah.
I remember.
Current.
Yeah, we came to Canada and when we went to Vancouver, you could get 25 cents, for 25 cents you could get a beer at the local, The Anchor.
Yeah,
From The Anchor, where people used to drink a few 25-cent beers and then get up and dance on the tables, which were about this big. And one place we went, I think we must have been on the road, and the beer was 50 cents. So Bing had to write the song, 50 cents a beer and the nookie is queer, I believe I'm gonna get out of here. Been sinking in the mud for such a long time, be the death of me before I see the sunshine. Stuff like that, you know. So we wrote songs about whatever was happening to him, just like all songwriters.
Yeah.
Nothing really special about that. We just, you know.
But the whole, in California, the music scene was incredible. So we were all inspired by we saw all the bands, Big Brother and all, you know,
Yeah.
they were all happening in the 60s. And so music was really a thing to get more into if you were into it at all. So, and becoming a band, there was all, played lots in Vancouver, you guys, and all the different auditoriums and stuff.
So you would have the counterculture of California being part of the, then obviously the Kootenays and meshing that sort of experience into the music.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, and Bing had hitchhiked up from our commune in 1968. He had hitchhiked up to Vancouver, and it was about 2 years behind California.
Yeah, but
and he went to the
lots going on.
one club that was kind of on the cutting edge and played there. And then when he came back to California, he said, hey, if we ever go to BC, we got to go play in Vancouver. And that was also a draw
Because
for
there were
us
a
for
lot
Vancouver.
of bands happening then too in Vancouver, new bands, and lots in those 70s.
So we did.
Fireweed and all those bands.
Yeah, we went
were
to
huge.
Vancouver in 71.
Yeah.
And we came to Canada 69, bought our place in 70, went to Vancouver in 71, kept our place. I mean,
Yeah,
Julie
all
still
these
wanted,
years.
Julie still
I'm selling it
owns
this
it.
year. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm still, 2 of us left owning it.
And it's worth more than $10,000,
Yeah,
let me tell you.
heck of a lot. 160
160 acres.
With 2 homes and lots of things.
And whereabouts did you perform Brain Damage? I mean, locally and also...
Right across the street, the mine shaft.
Yeah.
Under the credit union.
Yeah.
And then, well, she can talk more about the halls and stuff, but we did the tent shows were incredible. I don't know who bought the tent, or was that Peter Offerman?
Peter Offerman, yeah.
Bought this tent, and we started going on the road with the bus and the tent and just putting it up different places, all over BC mostly. That was fun.
Yeah,
I liked that part.
that was a revival tent from Kentucky.
Yeah.
And so it was big, because it was supposed to save souls, you know, so you want a lot of people in there. And so Peter bought that, and then we painted it with the big Flying Heart.
Big Flying
and
Heart.
you've probably seen some of the posters, because
Yeah,
Bob
I've given
Inwood...
him posters with it.
Yeah, Bob
yeah.
Inwood was
Yeah.
very involved, and he was, before we left for the States, my partner Ross and I lived in a duplex with Bob Inwood and his wife.
Yeah.
So we were all really old friends from when I was 16.
Yeah.
So, we played, so the tent shows were amazing.
Yeah.
Our front guy, not anybody in the band, but our front promoter type person, would go into the interior, and he'd go to farmers and anybody who had a big field, and he'd say, could we rent your field to do a big tent show? We'll make sure we clean up, we'll do all the promo and everything, and we'll give you a certain amount of money. And so we did Salmo outside of Creston.
Did the Silver King, well, it's now the Waldorf School up there?
Yeah, we did all over the place, put up our
And
tents.
on the islands,
And had
yeah,
these huge, and on
different-
the island. We had these huge tent shows, they were fantastic. And another band called Pied Pumpkin sometimes played with us. They were also buddies of ours. Yeah, so
Yeah, those were fun.
it was great.
Yeah.
It's quite an iconic thing, this tent. It's, I see it in different places. And what happened to it? Do you know where it ended up?
The tent,
Yeah,
the last time it was put up was for her wedding in
Yeah, when
Hills.
I got married many
was
years
when?
later in Hills, we searched for that tent, because I said to my husband,
Yeah,
wouldn't it
'cause
be
who
great
had-
if we could find the brain damaged tent? And the Nelson Maple Leafs had bought it, the Nelson Hockey Club.
Oh, I didn't
They
remember
had bought
that.
it from us way back when, or from Peter, way back when, and they used to do pancake breakfasts, and they used it for that.
Oh, I didn't know
And
that.
what they had done was over time, because it was an old tent, the side part of it had deteriorated, and only the center part with the Flying Heart was still on
Oh,
it,
wow.
both sides. And so we found it, and we hired them to put it up on our property, so we did our whole wedding, and we had everybody came out, that I mean, I know every band everywhere. So they all came out. The Brain Damage Band came out. I didn't sing with them, but they had T-shirts printed, and they called it I knew the bride when she used to rock and roll tour. So they played all over BC, but the focus was my wedding. So our wedding. My husband always says, it was my wedding too. Yeah. So that was very cool.
Yeah.
It was a cool thing that Peter Offerman did to buy that tent, and then along with the bus, and you'll see in the brochure that Julie gave you, and probably in the stuff that Bob has given you, our bus was painted, and our tent was painted, and we had a whole thing. And putting up that tent, especially when it had the two sides, took 15 people, because it was a huge job, putting up the big stakes and pinning it down and stabilizing it for wind, and it was a hell of a enterprise.
Yeah, but we got good at it.
The bus on the tent, definitely, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Right. You just tell us about the Valican Hole Community Centre, and move on to this, and how the project sort of brought the community together, and one question I do have, which I'm trying to find the answer to: who decided to turn up the Valican Hole? I know it was called the Valican Hole, sort of controversially, and it became the Valican W Hole.
The reason for that was it was a huge hole in the ground when we started it. It was then, so that was the name. The hole came from that. But when we were talking earlier, we were trying to figure out. It was a LIP grant because you and Ross worked there. We were trying to figure out who got that grant, and we're wondering if it was Michael Pratt or Corky Evans was around then. So I don't know if you've talked to Corky at all, because he was there then and involved in a lot of things. I'm sure he was involved in the Valican Hole, but
I think the person that knows more about it is Marcia Brondi.
yes, and Rita Moore you've talked to probably.
And Rita.
And also Nancy and Brian were involved in that as well, so they were telling us.
Nancy,
Yes.
Nancy.
But
Because Eric Clough was the architect of the
he
building.
was. But we can't remember who got the
Yeah.
grant or who made that happen in the beginning.
Yeah, we definitely were not part of
maybe
that,
Michael
other than
Pratt.
working there.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't far from our place a little bit in Valican.
What sort of work did you do there?
I did.
You did, you worked
we
there.
built, we did the foundation. We dug the foundation. Ross and I and Michael
I think
Pratt.
I worked one day.
And Bill
That was it.
Reynolds. We dug
yeah.
the foundation. That was a
Yeah.
hell of a job too.
A big hole. I remember that.
Yeah. And did you perform there at all?
I have performed there
Many
many
times,
times.
yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, well,
Not when it was a
the
hole.
reason for it
When it was
being
a-
was to have a community place where everybody could go, because there was not really any community halls at that time, I don't think. Like, there was just the little schoolhouses that have now become halls, like we have the Threads Guild and stuff, but
Appledale Hall was the only other
Appledale
one.
Hall was
But
a
it
school
was a
at
school,
the time, I
I think,
believe.
too,
They were
yeah.
all schools then. So there was really no place to gather or to have events or do anything, so that was the inspiration for starting it. But like I say, I'm not sure who exactly it was that came up with that idea for that piece of property too. I don't know who owned the property, if it was donated or what. That I'm not sure.
Somebody will tell you for
Yeah,
sure.
I would
Somebody
think
who was
so.
who was
Marcia Browning's
involved.
a good one because she lived on the property, on the same piece of property basically, the whole time. So she might have been part of, maybe it was part of her property that got donated. She does border right on there, her house.
She's been involved in the Valican Hole reunions. She's actually come up and interviewed me for some of that stuff too, and I played one or two of those big reunions too. But no, I'd say she'd be the
Yes.
good person.
Yeah.
Yes, we've also the Carpendales, I don't know if you know.
Yep.
Yeah, Carpendales were
so
very
they're
involved,
gonna
yeah.
be
TC and,
Of this project. Yes.
yeah.
Okay. Right. Were you involved with the alternative schools that were developed?
We weren't really involved with that because we didn't have kids, a baby, and the two kids were going to elementary school. So we didn't, we weren't involved in that. And the Valican Hole became a school, but it wasn't right away, I don't think.
No,
No, it was
No.
more just a hall.
several years, yeah.
Yeah, so it was several
I know
years
there was
later.
one at Hills as well.
Oh yeah, now that one I do know about, and I've
Because
talked to you about
she's
that.
a Hills person.
I do, because
yeah.
my husband was a principal of that. And Evelyn Goodell was the teacher, because she was the only one who was certified.
And was that a free type school, or was that a public school?
No, it was definitely a free school.
Oh,
yeah.
oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, in fact, the public schools sent the kids that they absolutely could not deal with at all,
To
even
the
from
free
the
school,
cusp to our school. But, and when I say our,
The Hills, yeah.
the Hill School, because later on we brought it back to life when our kid was a whole generation past that, and we started it again in Silverton.
The Goat Mountain School.
The
right?
Goat Mountain School, because that's what it was called, Goat Mountain School. But Daniel always reminds me that the principal's job was getting there early in the morning and lighting the fire, cleaning up any messes, doing the janitorial, fixing the pipes, fixing the roof.
Mm-hmm.
That was the principal's job. And Evelyn's job was to teach. So, yeah. So Evelyn or my husband would be really good people to talk to about the Goat Mountain School, the origins of that, yeah.
So Evelyn, I'm trying to type for an interview.
Pardon me?
Evelyn, I'm trying to type for an interview, so...
Yeah, yeah, I saw her last night and I forgot to tell her, yeah. But-
Yeah. Okay. So what were your favourite things looking back about those times, those counterculture times when you came to this area? What's your favourite thing that you look back on?
Just the community, just doing everything together with people, and all the great events like the tent shows and all those things. And yeah, just being part of a community. There was all kinds of other organizations that we started, like the Threads Guild, the Watershed Alliance, the Kootenay Co-op, different things like that. So it's kind of neat now to look back and see what we built from coming here with not anything really. So that makes me happy, but I don't know what else. Yeah, I'm not sure what else. You?
I just
Yeah.
love the fact that it was different.
Yeah.
It was different. It was feeling
Yeah.
like we felt free. And of course, see,
Yeah.
this is not just a hippie thing. This is a 19, 20, 21-year-old thing. And I see kids of that age, I'm sorry, I see kids also that just dive right into the handcuff me to a job and all that
Yeah.
stuff. But at that age, we wanted adventure and we were getting adventure.
Yeah.
And it was
Yeah.
great. And
It was a great adventure, yeah.
I feel like I have, it supported my musical thing. I've always been really strong in my music, and it's just gotten better and better. As a professional, I've gotten better and better. And that's one of the very, very important things about music. You can't, it's organized, but it gives me the chance to really express myself the same way I was doing then.
Creativity, yeah.
Super creative. And we made incredible friends that are still our good friends
Yeah.
to this day.
Yeah.
And as I know it bleeds into the question about skills, but it also, as Julie said, I was not involved in the Watershed Alliance, but Julie was, because she stayed down there and I went back to California for my career. First I moved to Hawaii and then I moved to California for my career and didn't come back till 1990. So Julie was involved in a lot of that political stuff in the valley
Yeah.
that I was not involved in.
Protecting the forest. And we did.
Well, that seems to be the environmental movement. It seems to have been really coming to the fore with a lot of people who were living on communes or were coming to the region, back to land as were. Well, I don't want to put words into mouth, but were certainly very important to raise the awareness within the area, and that led on to various societies, protests that were going on.
Oh yeah.
Through the decades, really.
Yeah, well, like with the Watershed Alliance, we just one day somebody was looking in the newspaper and they had posted this local mill what they were going to cut, and it was right up to our border of our property, all around us, and they were going to do a lot of logging in the valley. And we had a man named Herb Hammond who lives here now, who came up from Oregon Forestry. That's what he used to teach, the forestry department down there. I think he taught at Selkirk, that's when he moved here. But he helped us form this Slocan Valley Watershed Alliance, which was included all the way up to hills, and the cusp was like 12 different groups or something. And we protected a lot of the valley, and now the mill is completely gone. We would have had clear cuts behind us, now we've still got forest. So that's something we learned in, excuse me, California too, is the strength in numbers. And we used to go to the protests and the Vietnam War stuff, and basically I think those protests did end that war. And so we felt enabled to do things like that be more in control of our own environment and not being just walked over. That was part of the whole movement, actually, the anti-establishment part of it.
We came up right around the time that they were flooding the Arrow Lakes.
They had just flooded the Arrow Lake.
And we lived in Fauquier.
Yeah.
And the people that we lived on that property was 400 acres, of which 200 was flooded. That was a rich area for orchards and in direct competition with the Okanagan. And when the Bennett family, or Bennett, who was our premier at the time, had done this deal, the Columbia River Treaty, basically that benefited the Okanagan to flood out those areas, the Arrow Lakes, the areas that were actually in some competition. And I could go into the politics of that for a long time, but won't. But I have to say that because a lot of us came from California, and I did go to a couple of watershed meetings, but I was not involved like Julie was, I kept thinking, why are these Canadian people letting the government just
do this?
Why are they bending over for them? Like, we would fight.
Yeah.
And that was just like, we were, in a way, we came up as privileged white kids, and I'm saying we didn't come from a wealthy family thing, but we had the privilege of a good education and kind of a lot of chutzpah. And we came up and just went, we will do something about this. We're not gonna stand for being logging to our borders or possibly endangering our water. Are you kidding me? So
we stopped the spraying they were gonna spray Spike, which is Agent Orange, basically, the whole railway line from the cusp to Nelson, and we stopped that. And now the rail line doesn't even go there anymore. It's a walking path, it's a bike path. So if that hadn't been done, nobody would want that as a bike path. If there was chemicals in it was ridiculous that they were going to do that. But that was a really good protest, and it worked. So it feels good to be in control of things like that if you can, with the strength in numbers, like I was saying, just like-minded people.
And Julie also did not only just environmental stuff, but she also was one of the people who formed the Threads Guild.
Threads Guild, yeah.
And brought these people together, mostly women, who did textile art, because she's a textile person. And that's, to this day, what is it, 55 years or something?
And we have 131 members. It's been 40 years, I think we have just had our 40th. But yeah, it was basically a group of women, 4 or 5 of us, that wanted to do things like knit and stuff, but you couldn't buy anything here. So we started just getting together once every couple of weeks and ordering yarn from back east. And so it's just started out as kind of a club hobby thing, but it just grew bigger. And then when all the schools came empty, we ended up buying the school below us, as Perry Creek store. I don't know what it was called.
Yeah, I can't remember what it's called too.
Anyway, it was our school, sorry. And we bought it for $1, and now that's our clubhouse, basically. We've had it for 30 years, and it's a thriving organization. It's really amazing. So that's cool. That's just grown too. And then the Kootenay Co-op, we started out, we were a buying club, same kind of thing. We'd buy big hunks of cheese and then divide them up to whoever, had ordered, and that just got bigger and bigger. We were using the schoolhouse that they just tore down in
South
Slocan, and then it moved into the alley. And so it's neat to watch all those things develop, and from the original thought of making it work for all of us. So that's been kind of fun.
The thing that was really cool about that time is we worked as teams, and this is one of the things about living communally.
Yeah.
You worked as a team. Maybe it wasn't organized that way, but I have to say, as a musician, I'm always on a team. I mean, I got a band right now with 10 people, so, and you become a very good team player if you come out of that kind of thing. And Julie is a perfect example because she could work politically, she could work with the Threads Guild. A lot of us are quite good team players and continue to benefit from that time that we learn to live in community and to not have a feeling, and because we come from Canada and US particularly, we're pioneer cultures. We're like every man for himself, it's all the individual, and it's that kind of ethic, which is screwed in my view. So you get a thing that happens like COVID, for instance, and you got a real division between people who want their personal freedom and people who are willing to maybe take a little bit of suffering for the team. And I'm not saying anybody's right or not, but it's just
that
it's
a different attitude.
A different attitude.
Yeah.
And I see that in a number of fields, like Julie talked about the co-op. There's just the seminal part of it is this thing that we're going to do something that's community-oriented. Goat Mountain School, perfect example. We're going to do something that is a team thing, and we're going to do it together, and we're going to do it maybe for free, or for very little money,
volunteer
or
time,
lots and lots of hours.
Yeah.
Put in lots of hours.
So the Kootenay Co-op, I mean, do you remember how it really started? Who was the impetus?
Just like I said, it was a group of us in the valley buying, because we had come from Vancouver where we were really involved in a group called Kool-Aid, which had a food co-op. And so we'd buy for the group big hunks of cheese, pounds of nuts and whatever. We'd have an order list from Federated Co-op in Calgary or wherever it was, and then just divide it up. It was about once a month. And so we started doing that kind of thing in the valley with maybe 20 families or something. You just order, and then it just got bigger and bigger. So we moved to the Art Folks Home, it was called, that school in Slocan, and then that didn't work for some reason. So it somehow morphed from that into the co-op in town here. I know
First
Lynn,
it was
a
in
woman
Heritage
named
Lane.
Lynn Kao was, in the
she was
alley
running
there.
it out of here.
Yeah, Lynn Kao was really involved in that part of it. So, but I don't know where she is now. But that was just sort of how that started. Same thing, just started out small and just kept bigger and bigger. And
Now they moved around on Baker Street.
yeah, I
different
used to be on the
locations.
Baker Street down there, and now it's just amazing.
But original bit of, it was definitely different.
And the thing I love about that co-op is it's still, like lots of people complain about the prices, every penny of profit goes into the community. They're not making, nobody's making a bunch of money like Amazon or any of those. It's all still a very communal thing, store, and it's an incredible store.
And they buy locally a lot.
Yeah,
I mean, there's a lot of
local
locals.
support for whatever, everything. Supply resources and different classes they do, people that teach things and cooking.
I know they get things from local co-ops and as well as individual businesses, so it's interesting, supporting local people there.
Canada has a history of co-op movement, the co-op, what they call the co-op,
Yes,
like the one
well,
in
from
Slocan.
Yeah.
And I've performed up in way up north, but near the top of the island, one of the islands, Malcolm Island, a Finnish community, and I think the Finn, I
What's the name of
think
that
the co-op
place? Yeah.
came from the Finns. They were boat builders, and they also were just co-op people. And so you see them all over, like when I toured all over Canada, I would see these places that had very vibrant co-ops that were still happening after 100 years.
Yeah.
So that's not a hippie thing. That's much like
communal. Yeah.
but it is definitely a team. It's teams.
Awesome. Where did we get to here? Anything you miss about living on a sort of communal setting?
What do I miss? Maybe, I don't know if I miss anything about it. I'd have to think about it.
Daniel always says, my husband always says, been there, done that, but he never lived in the commune. He never did live in the commune.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I feel. Like, it was great at the time, it's wonderful now. I'm older and I just like quieter and whatever. But I still, like say, would still have a lot of contacts with the same people, and still really close to a lot of the same people. So
There's a powerful thing that, because I don't live in the lower valley anymore. But I do when I go help Julie at the Threads Guild, when they have their big event in the end of April. I often see old friends that I haven't seen for years there. And there is what's the right
like
word?
a bond.
It's a bond,
yeah.
It's a bond. It's like almost like a family thing. You just look at that person and you go, I know, I was there.
Yeah,
And
because
that's
when
very
you
cool.
live with people, you get to know them better than if you don't, for sure.
And those aren't necessarily people that I lived with. These are
No.
people that were in this
that kind of
milieu.
movement, yeah.
You know, and one of the things was LSD. I have to say LSD was a big thing for me. And now I am part of a Buddhist Sangha, and I'm not a religious person at all. And Buddhism, you could look at it as a religion. I do not look at it. It's a way of being. And there are a lot of similarities in the way the Buddhist teachings reflect what we felt as hippies, and also the teaching that LSD gave us. I mean, LSD might have been a party drug for some, was never for me. It was an exploring drug. And I learned some things. You learned whether you want to or not. You learned that you were interconnected, that the Buddhist thing of interbeing is obvious on LSD. And you learn to be less judgmental, you learn to be more open and accepting. So there's, people that have first of all, people that have taken acid and taken acid and didn't just have a bad trip and never did it again, but it was part of their life. And if those people haven't gone yuppie and rejected that part of their background, then you know that. And I mean, for me as a musician, I never did reject it. So, I mean, I'm not taking acid anymore, believe me. I'm 74 years old. I'm smart. I wasn't so smart before. But yeah, it's that thing that we experienced together was powerful, and drugs were part of it, and switching partners was part of it. I mean, that's that's the honest truth. Just adventurous, taking
we
risks.
don't necessarily miss it or anything.
No, I don't miss it either.
It's like, say, been there, done that. It's part of what we did, and now we're into another phase of our lives. But the connections are still there, like you say, with a lot of the people that live that way.
I always think all roads lead to here. And this is fine. I like this.
Yeah.
So whatever roads I've been on,
To
some
get
of
you
them were
here,
pretty weird, but they led to here, and I'm good.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Last question. Okay. How do you think living on a commune and being part of the counterculture movement has affected your life?
Just kind of the same things we were saying about just learning how to be accepting of people and learning how to get along, learning, like I was telling her about Herb Hammond used to say when we'd come to these meetings and we'd get some horrible reports or whatever from the forester that we'd have to deal with, he'd say, okay, how do we get to yes? You know, so it was really a good way to think. You've always got to work towards everybody being happy. No, as happy as you could be, but yeah, just working together with people. I think that's something we still value and have learned in our lives from that experience.
I think we got lots of skills, like Julie was talking about.
Yeah, and learned lots of skills,
and
for sure. Learned how to bake bread and can and how to do that stuff. Yeah.
And there's still, I have a really good friend, I just was talking to her on Zoom in North Carolina, and she's Jewish, for one thing, and so that's rare in North Carolina. It is actually the north part of the South, like Virginia is, but it's still the South. So she was saying to me, I am in so much pain now, looking at what is happening in the U.S. and seeing all my young dreams. She was an environmental lawyer and a public defender. So she's very bright and always did things for the right reasons, in my view. And now she sees this every man for himself kind of thing just taking hold like a
it is, yeah.
like a invasive disease or something. And it's heartbreaking. And I am grateful because I left the US
Yep.
and I came to Canada, and Canada's got the same shit that the US has, and it could go a similar way, and
Yeah.
luckily we're just like the little brother.
Yeah.
You know, we're not a big dominant. We can't say, well, we're the biggest power in the
Yeah.
world and we got to get democracy everywhere, including, meaning killing a few thousand people or whatever. I'm grateful for that, and I can still hold on to my ideals from, I mean, you know, you get more savvy for sure as you get older.
Yeah.
But those ideals are still totally my ideals.
Yeah. And we still live
So
a good lifestyle.
Yeah, I don't need to go
Yeah.
back to live the communal life or live
No.
the counterculture life. I've got it, it's inside.
No. And we're still, like, I'm still going to Threads Guild meetings, and not the watershed anymore, but we're still dealing with people and working together and doing different things. Like, you still got groups and.
Oh yeah, I'm still,
Yeah.
I was the president of the Healthy Community Society, which does the food security for the whole North Slocan Valley.
Yeah.
I've stepped off the board now because I'm involved in a food hub in New Denver,
Right.
big food hub.
Yeah.
And for people who are food producers can come into our certified kitchen and make their food to sell. We do workshops. We're going to be having pop-up restaurants. We're just about to open officially. We've been waiting for the COVID slowed things way down.
Yeah.
But no, I'm still involved in
So
all
we're
that kind of
still
stuff,
doing those
and
kind of
also
things, yeah.
involved in environmental stuff a lot.
Yeah.
Green Party and lots of environmental stuff. Yeah, so the legacy is there. Don't have to go back.
No.
Just look at it and
So-
go, yeah, I learned this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think the general politics of the area certainly changed really quite a lot from the 70s. And yes, you mentioned the Green Party. I mean, it was quite a conservative, from my understanding, it was quite a conservative area really before the mid 60s or
Canada.
so, and then it's gone a lot more to the left, I suppose you'd say.
Yeah.
Progressive, I think, would
and
be the
more-
term.
Well, yes. Okay.
And
Somewhat.
international kind of, lots of
Yeah.
people from all over.
Yeah.
That's a quick question about that. Was there a lot of differences between kind of like what would become more Green Party movement, and then was there a difference between people who would come to support the NDP and like more union labor sort of movements? Was there conflict? Was there agreement in those?
There was kind of a little conflict, I remember, at one point when Corky and Colleen McCrory were running, and they all had the same kind of supporters, both of them, but I don't remember.
I find it very different now. I find it very,
it's
very
different.
divisive. I
Yeah,
find
now it's much more divisive,
NDP
yeah.
is a socially progressive party, so the labor unions, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But environmentally, they stink. And so and they're also very condescending toward the Green Party. And I mean, I was actually one of the first Green Party members in BC. Started in my friend's futon, their little futon factory.
Oh yeah, the futon lady.
There were 5
yeah.
or 6 of us. And yeah, so I think they're really on a different program. There could be, I mean, Alex Adamanenko, who used to be our
Yeah.
MP for this area, wonderful, wonderful NDP guy. Castlegar is his base. He wrote a letter to the Valley Voice in the last issue of the year saying, please, can we get together
Yeah.
federally? Can we put the Greens together with possibly with the Liberals and the NDP? Can we have a coalition to stop Polyev and the Conservatives,
Yeah.
who are going to do what every provincial government has done pretty much in BC? They're going to undermine or trash the good things
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm a fan of the Liberals necessarily, but the good things that the Liberals have put in, the Conservatives are just going to throw out.
Yeah.
We spend a lot of time in our elections, when the election cycle happens, we spend 1 or 2 years dismantling the last group.
Yeah.
So we're not moving forward. Anyway, that's my answer, long answer to the NDP Green thing.
Bit off topic, but I was just very curious. I really wanted to hear what you had to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think they're really, there's a big difference now. And I think that the NDP can get pushed environmentally in a bad direction because of the unions. Everybody wants
Yeah.
votes,
Yeah.
you know, and if you're in power especially, you want to maintain that, so. The Greens have the luxury of not being the party in power, so you can criticize.
Yeah, yeah, true, yeah. The opposition.
Okay. All right. Is there anything you'd like to add or bring up?
To add, I don't.
Well, I'm glad you're doing this. This is
Yes,
very cool.
I think it's fantastic, yeah.
And we have had good conversations, and it's sparked conversations between me and my husband about our backgrounds. They're different, but we both have we're counterculture people. And yeah, and I think that the team thing is big.
Yeah.
You know, my husband and his buddies in Hills built the ball field, all volunteer. They started Goat Mountain School, all volunteer. You know, we just did that sort of stuff, and it maintains. There's something today, the legacy that Garlic Festival. I'm one of the organizers for the Garlic Festival. So
That's another one.
there's another one.
I think the women's movement as well. I mean that's a huge impact as well. So.
Yeah, the women's movement started
Yeah.
before I left California,
Yeah.
but yeah. Black
But yeah,
power.
it's kind of like you said, we came here, it was sort of just a quiet, straight area kind of, and we've decided to make the changes we wanted for it, and it just sort of developed, like the co-op and all the things that we wanted to have, and made it happen with lots of people that are like-minded.
I hope that you are interviewing, or you have, or you will, Doukhobors who really have held to their communal beliefs
Yeah.
and their
I think we'll be yes. Yes.
spiritual beliefs or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, that really, and music is a huge part of the Doukhobor thing.
Yeah, it is.
Huge.
Yeah.
Their songs kept the Sons of Freedom sane when they were in jail.
Yeah.
They communicated through their songs.
Yes, we're going to Doukhobor Museum and we're going to be interviewing.
Oh, nice.
Good.
Figures there.
Great.
So definitely.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, and we're going to the ashram as well.
Mm-hmm.
So
Oh,
we're
yeah.
interviewing the president there actually. So
Yeah.
So yeah, it's happening. It's
Mhm.
great. And
Mhm.
we're delighted with the response that we've had as well from various people
Mhm.
to the story. So it's been fantastic for us.
Well, once you start looking into it, there's so much. Yeah, it just keeps growing. And start thinking about all the different areas and groups.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Sweet.
you.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
very, very, very
It's been
pleasant.
It's been a pleasant.
And
Yeah.
your questions were good, and we could have said way more stuff, but
Yeah.
But yeah, let your freak flag fly. That was one of the things that we used to say. Like, don't be afraid, let your freak flag fly.
I remember that.
Oh,
The other
yeah.
one is peace, love, and groovy.
Yeah.
That was always
Yeah.
peace, love, and groovy.